Hi everybody, Giselle Grenier here from artplace.ca. In today's video we're going to be creating a book of backgrounds on the back side of one of the pages. I'm going to be using the back side of this one. And I also wanted to mention that although that we're creating the book of backgrounds, whatever page size you want, if you create a background on a page like this, you can also create, when you're doing the actual artwork on it, you can also fold it in half and then create a smaller spread. You don't have to use the whole piece like this, okay? Just so you don't have to use the whole thing. So in today's video, we're going to experiment by using gesso on top of a print, and we're going to use some modeling paste to create an abstract background. And I'm going to warn you, Chaos is in one of her moods, so she may jump on the table in the middle of something, and if I'm doing something and I can't stop, I'm going to kind of try to hold her back. There's nothing more frustrating than when you have a cat jump on your table and you cannot stop what you're doing. To save some time, I've done a little bit of preparation work. So what I did is, now this particular background is done on Terraskin, which is basically paper made from stone. And although it doesn't need to be primed, I wanted it to be primed just from the aspect of I needed something to glue the tissue onto, plus it makes the page a little bit more substantial, not so thin. So what I did, using the DecoArt Media Gesso and my number 8 bristle brush, and I applied the gesso just using X strokes so I have a little bit of texture. It's not perfectly smooth. I don't know if you could see some of that texture in there. There you go. I think you can see some of that. So to get, and the reason why I want the texture is when I put the tissue on top of here, I want to keep some of those wrinkles. Okay, and then I let that dry for about an hour. So now what we're going to do is we're going to collage this. Now, again, to save some time, what I did is I'm using this particular printed tissue, and what this is it's just gift wrap tissue, and I used the French Living American Decor stencil. And I stenciled that on there, and I just used carbon black. Now, if you find that you have trouble stenciling, depending on what brush you're using, and I was just using a stencil brush just to pounce it. Now the DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics and all fluid acrylics may be a bit thin when you're working on tissue this delicate. If that's the case, use a thicker acrylic. And if I were to do this again, what I may do is just go with the Traditions Carbon Black, which is the artist quality acrylic. It's a much thicker acrylic, and that way it won't seep in and tear your paper. Now, it didn't happen with this one, but I did try another one, and the paper did tear because this tissue is so delicate, and water just disintegrates it. Okay, so do a little test stamp first, a test stencil, to see if it's okay, and if it's not okay, then just use a thicker acrylic. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside. And I didn't want to save time collaging this ahead of time. I actually want to show you how I was doing this. So I'm going to use matte medium. And I'm using my 1-inch wash brush, and I'm using it dry. Now, when you're using a brush, I don't want to add any additional water to this because, I don't want it to tear. But when you use your brush dry, with medium, make sure the minute you're finished with this, put it into a container if you have to continue working. So the water is just not above the ferrule, just below. And that way it'll keep your bristles wet. Now, what I did for this particular one is I added a little bit of water. It's about halfway up this part here. And I added about a teaspoon of 1000 plus stain remover, and when I put the brush into these chambers, just the bristles are going to stay wet, which will allow me to keep working. But we do need to let this dry, but I just want to give you, just sometimes people work on many different projects at once. And I did that this morning, and I want to test the bucket part, and it did work. And I'm just doing this on my no stick mat. And going to apply, now because this is such a large area and it's a little warm here, it may start to dry out right start to dry quite quickly, I'll go back and just apply a little bit more. I'd rather put 2 thin layers than a heavy layer because it'll take too long to dry. And I'll crumple that up. Oh, chaos is watching me. So I want to keep the wrinkles. Okay, so I'm going to put that down. Where's the edge there? I want the wrinkles, and I'm just getting this right to the edge. I will have to trim this a little bit. I'm not worried about that. And just press it down. Look at the wrinkles in that. By golly, I like this. So I'm going to still need this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap my brush into a baby white because I'm not finished with it yet. But I want to show you something. I don't know about you, but I get the Deco Art glue type mediums, whether it's the matte medium or the decoupage medium. That stuff is so strong, which is a good thing, but if I let it dry on my hands, I have trouble getting it off. And what I tried this morning, I was doing a whole bunch of ATCs to prepare for another video. I took wax paper because I want to keep the wrinkles, wax paper on top and just press. And what this is going to do is I don't want to flatten out the wrinkles. I want to keep the wrinkles, but I do need to push the tissue down a bit into the medium so it has something to stick to. And what I am going to be doing is in a few days, I'm going to be doing not really a show and tell, but a video. I received my unstick, no stick mat. And I'm going to be actually using that instead of this one. And then this one here, I'm going to be cutting up into pieces to use for this type of purpose. That way I won't have to keep buying wax paper. There we go. The matte medium is not so liquid. This is dry. I could actually work on this right away. But I'm just feeling, so there's a little bit of medium needed here. Just where it didn't quite go down. And you know what? Might as well do this because I know I'm going to end up doing it anyways. Just going to go around the edges. See, right here it's lifting up. I'm just going to push that down. You don't have to do it everywhere, but mind you, if you do this, apply the matte medium on the whole piece. When it comes to the next step where we apply the paint, it's so easy to wipe back and you get some really cool effects. So while I'm doing this, just let you know that these videos are primarily for beginners and intermediates, so I'm not going to be editing out any mistakes. I do talk my way through this, so and if you're more advanced, you are more than welcome to skip ahead to the next section. So once I've got that on there, you notice that I'm not rubbing the brush this way because the tissue is so delicate. I don't want to pull the tissue, that I'm flattening it. It is rough on the brush. That's that. Now, one thing I want to show you, which is kind of cool. Not closing the lid, that's not cool, but when you've got your page on here, think, ooh, how am I going to pick this up? How am I going to pick this up? I don't want to, if I got to get my fingers in here, I might lift this up, which is exactly what happened. So these brushes, because they've got the cut angle, it's all like a little spatula. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on my drying rack, which is right behind me. And I'll let this dry naturally for, I think this is probably going to be about half an hour or so that I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning up. Yes, I can use a heat gun, but when we're experiencing the hot weather that we're experiencing, I hate making my hydrometer spin even faster using a heat gun. So I'm going to let this dry naturally, and we'll come back when it's all dry. I'm just going to trim the paper here. And this paper here does, when you're working on Terraskin, it does take a little bit longer to dry because the Terraskin actually doesn't absorb anything. If you're using watercolor paper, it'll absorb some of the medium and you can start working on it right away. One of the nicest things about Terraskin is that it's tear resistant. Very, very strong. Oh, and I've got chaos watching little pieces of paper falling onto the table. I'm just going to quickly just this. You can use these two to create pieces as well. Add some texture to smaller pieces. Oops. I'm trimming that now because I don't want it to accidentally get caught. Alright, so now I'm going to get my, what am I going to use? Cerulean blue. I'm going to use cerulean blue and my half-inch shader. Half-inch, yeah. I'll dip that into a little bit of water. So when I'm doing this, I usually use a bigger brush, but this one here, I actually want to create some visual texture. And I'm just going to just use vertical strokes, and I don't want it to be perfect. This does take longer using a smaller brush, but it's intentional. I want to create a lot of texture, visual texture. As I'm brushing it out, so watch. I start here and it's dark, and as I brush it out, it gets lighter. Oh, little piece of paper. Oh, that didn't quite get glued down, so that's okay. The acrylics will also help glue down your papers. So I've got this line here, so I'm just going to fade that out. One of the experiments I'm going to be running, that just sounds funny, I'm going to be doing in this video is creating, I'm going to be stamping some stuff on here, and I'm going to be creating my own stamp, my medium. I'm not using a stamp pad, I'm going to be using the DecoArt wax metallics along with some acrylics. And I'll need more paint. And the nice thing with this particular paint, it's transparent, well, semi-transparent. So you can still see some of this stuff in here. And I'm tempted to basically just fast forward this because it's the same thing I'm doing, but there's a reason why I want to do this in real time, so you can see how as things dry, how the texture is starting to be built up. And I do think my book of backgrounds for 2017, I'm going to be working on smaller pieces, so they don't take as long to finish. You can create them in whatever size you want, but the ones that I did do that were 5x7, the videos were much shorter because they didn't take so long. See, as I'm going over, I love the texture. I'm going to add a little bit more. And I'm not going back over the same spot. I'm just picking new spots to go over, making sure that I retain that visual texture, the overlapping pieces. And I do want the corners to be darker because I'm going to be adding some modeling paste, which will be white. So I need the contrast to be there. And when you're doing this, you can really use any color of paint based on your own personal preference. I want some of this background to show through, but in the next step, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a much lighter blue, which will be more opaque, to push some of this back. And if you were doing this without tissue, then you can use your big brush and just apply it throughout the whole thing. I just want to make sure I still keep the wrinkles in here. There we go. And I'm going to put that in the water. And just clean this up here. Oopsie. And I'll let this dry for a few minutes, and when we come back, I'm going to go into the cobalt teal hue with a little bit of translucent white, and we're going to do a very gentle rub and diffuse some of that color and push it right back. So I've got some cobalt teal hue. And I'm going to use titanium white, not translucent white. Titanium white. I want it to be more opaque. I'm going to start off with equal parts of both. And what I want to do is I want to bring it down to a very, very, very light blue. So I'm going to bring in some of that white and then bring in some of the blue. So I'm looking for about something like that. Now, when you're working on your no-stick mat, be very careful when you're using a metal palette knife that you don't actually scratch your mat. So I'm going to bring the rest in here. A bit more. I should be using my plastic palette knife on this. That's not too bad. And one thing to keep in mind is acrylics dry darker. There's only one brand out there that I know of as of right now. They don't, what they look like wet is the way they look like dry, and I think that's made by Winsor Newton. And I'm going to use this cute little pouncer. I'm not going to use a brush on this because what I want is I want to blend this into the whole piece. And yes, I can use a cosmetic sponge, but the cosmetic sponge is a little bit rough, and I just want to get into the texture. And what I'm looking at doing, I'm going to apply, then use the other side to wipe some of it back. So I'm kind of pushing this design back a little bit because it is just a background. And how much you put on is completely up to you. And I'm thinking I probably need a little bit more white. I want it to be a little bit lighter than that. You really don't know until you put it down. Now, because these paints are, other than the white, like the cobalt teal hue, yeah, it's transparent, so you're going to have some of the background showing through, which is fine. That's better. I want it to be just barely visible. And by using this little sponge, I'm getting inside the wrinkles. It's a little bit gentler than using the cosmetic sponge. That was a little bit wet. This is still damp over here. And this is actually used for stenciling as well. So this will be totally dependent on how dark your initial back. See how the difference in that already? Because when we start when I do that stamping using the metallic paint, I need it to show up. Now, if you by chance happen to lighten it too much, I'm going to show you what to do. In this particular technique, you have to be very, very careful. Only because, well, sometimes because you've got the tissue on there, it doesn't always work. So I'm going to put my little brush in the water. So what I like to do is basically let this air dry for a few minutes, and then a baby wipe or even a soft cloth, and come in and very gently start wiping some of that back. And what you end up getting is a distressing. And when you're distressing it, when you're wiping that, you're hitting the ridges. You're hitting the ridges, and the paint that's inside the cracks stays. So I'm focusing on the typography. I'm focusing on the typography. I want to make sure that shows through, and actually it's not too bad. Make sure you always go with a clean baby wipe. Be very careful because you don't want to tear the tissue. Now you have a lot more time at home to do this, so if possible, let your collage actually dry for a few hours if you have the time. Mine was still a little bit tacky because of the humidity. And this part here, I was going to speed it up, but no, I'm going to let you see this in real time, because if I screw up and make a mistake, then I want to show you how to fix it. There we go. Okay, so now see all the rubbing I was doing? I ripped some of the paper. So what do? Well, I'm not going to panic. It's just going to be part of the design. What I can do is take, I won't even use my finger, and I'll just work that in. There we go. And now to kind of tie that into other areas, I'll just take that same paint. In areas where the typography is minimal, I'll just kind of put this color in there. So it kind of ties everything so it's not so splotchy. Joe just came home, so I had to stop for a sec. So okay, so this is in there now, and I can still see just a little bit in here. I'm not going to worry too much about it. And just going to kind of put that in. Now these paints are non-toxic, so finger painting with them are fine. It's just cleaning your fingers after the fact. Just some areas that are a little bit dark. And it's kind of dreamy, what I want it to be. I want it to be dreamy. And now that I see this, I'm thinking I wanted to use a different stencil. I'm also using this page as a prompt as well. And what that means is I'm actually going to stencil some words on here, or a word. So when it comes to actually creating the artwork, it will also serve as a prompt. But now I'm thinking the prompt that I wanted to put on there doesn't suit the page. But I'm still gonna do it. All right, so that takes care of that. So I'm going to let this dry, and what I'm going to do with all this leftover paint, I'm just going to apply it into another journal, so that way nothing gets wasted. And then when we come back, I'm going to do the stenciling, and to the stenciling, or for the stamping, I'm going to be combining. Oh, what am I doing? I'm going to be combining the DecoArt Metallic Luster, the Cosmic Blue, along with the DecoArt Mister, a primary cyan, to make something nice and dark. And then we're going to do some modeling paste with stencil. We're going to splat some paint, and we're going to put our our word on there, and then we'll be finished. I'm going to take out this metallic luster, and with all my misters, I went to a store, it's called Princess Auto, and I picked up these, actually they're BBs for air guns, about that big, and I put one inside, so when I shake it up, because the pigment settles, and that way it mixes up quite nicely. And I'm just going to put some, so that, this should be enough. I don't need too much. And let's see, I hate using my metallic palette knife. Oh, that's all I've got right now handy. Gonna take a little bit of the metallic luster. Gonna blend that in. And the mister deepens the blue, but it also liquefies it a little bit because this stuff is water soluble. Now once you, because I'm using it for the stamping medium, when you actually apply it to your page and buff it, it becomes permanent. Put a little bit more in there. And yes, I can spray this, but it would, I don't want it to get all over the place. There we go, that's better. Yeah, I'm liking that. And the stamp I'm using for this is from Kaiser Craft. It's called Chicken Wire, one of my favorite stamps. You just need something abstract. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little number 10 shader, and I'm just going to brush this. You need a really nice flat brush to do this. And you have to work quickly. And all you're going to do is just put it in some random spots. And what I like about these stamps is that you can bend them. Let's see, what else have I got? I've got some stuff here. I love doing stuff off the page. And yes, I could have mounted the block, but I wanted to be able to curl it. That's actually pretty good. Take what's left on the brush. I want to make sure I get a good amount on the sides because that's where I'm going to be putting the modeling paste. Yeah, I love this. And all it's doing is just adding another element of texture. Make sure I clean that quite quickly. With some of these cling stamps, and I'm not a stamping expert at all, I'll just soak them into some water until I'm ready to clean them. I'm not a huge fan of rubber stamps because they take way too much maintenance. But again, I'm not an expert on stamps, so I'll just put that into my water. And let me just pick this up. And yes, I should have actually put this into, I should have put that onto, into an ATC or something. All right. That's almost dry. If you're working, while this is drying, I want to mention, if you're working on Terraskin, now there are other companies that have, like there's Yupo and other ones that have stone paper. I think, is it Stamperia that they came out with one? I don't know. But, so I'm going to talk specifically about Terraskin. If you use a heat gun, you know how I always have my heat gun high, I put my hand here and to test, as long as my hand can take the heat, it's fine. You got to be very, very careful with Terraskin because if you happen to heat it up, don't forget, it's paper made from stone. stone gets hot. So just be careful if you're using your heat gun on Terra skin. Okay, otherwise it's going to really buckle. And I should do a video what happens with Terra skin if it overheats. Okay, that's dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little kitchen cloth and I'm just going to gently wipe. Oh, that wasn't dry yet. And what I'm doing is I'm burnishing it into the background. And then it becomes permanent. I'm buffing it. And that's smeared. Doesn't matter because I'm putting the modeling paste there. And I'm going to be thinking twice about the sentiment or the prompt because I was going to use the French elements and I was going to use apothecary in French. And I was going to put it right here, but I'm not sure now if I want to put it on there. I'm not sure if I want to put it on there, so we'll see. All right, I'm going to put my little package for my stamp, put that away. And what we're going to do now is, let's use the modeling paste. Modeling paste, let's put that out of the way. Let's put this out of the way. Let's put this out of the way. Put that out of the way. And the stencil I'm going to be using for that is the Deckwart stencil from Andy Skinner. It's called Shedded. Yes, I don't clean my stencils. Okay, so I'm using the Deckwart Media Modeling Paste. And it looks kind of funny. And that's because I didn't know that it happened. I dropped one of the containers and it cracked. And it was like that for a bit before I even noticed it was cracked. So it was a bit dried. So I just put it into another container. So, and it's really, really thick. And you know what? I like this. I really like how thick this is. So what I'm going to do is put this on here. And I'm not doing a complete coverage. I'm putting this on randomly. And how thick you put it on is completely up to you. You can put it on really thick, really thin. And I'm going to make sure that I pick up this here. Turn that around. That's gonna, it is gonna, if I had the time, I'd let that dry before overlapping it. Oh, I can hear the kids outside. I'm doing face painting today. And hopefully they wait before coming to the door. Otherwise, you know who is going to bark her fool head off. I love texture. Textureholic. I'm going to put this in just a little bit more. And good amount right here. Be very careful when you're using a palette knife. I already mentioned this. Be very careful when you're using your palette knife on a no-stick mat. Oh, the kids are here. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this up. And I want a lot of the small stuff. Like Jo went outside and said she needs a few minutes. What's she doing? She's doing a video. Why? They're really little. And I'm going to put one here. And now I'm going to basically use the part where I'm cleaning the stencil now. And now be very careful when you're doing this part here on a no-stick mat. I did that with my other mat, took this off, and then I scraped it and it gouged it. There we go. Okay. Everything in water. This is going to take, because the humidity is going to take about half an hour to dry, or maybe even an hour. But I'm going to go paint some kids' faces. And then when we come back, we'll splat some paint and then add our sentiment. So I'll be back in a bit. It's all dry now. Look how beautiful it looks. I can show you the texture. Isn't that beautiful texture? Lovely. So I thought, okay, I am going to put the, oh, that's not quite dry yet. I'm going to put the quote or the word right here. And I'm putting it off-centered. Everybody here, I thought, well, let's try it with, we'll try it with this. And let's see, I'm going to try with this little pouncer. Let's see how that works. I want it to be just ever so visible. I need a bit more visible than that. I think I'm going to go to a darker color. Yeah, I'm going to go to a darker color. So there's a whole bunch of these different colors. Let's try mixing. Let's try mixing a little bit. That should work. Yep. Yep. The face painting went really well, but you know what? I'm glad I didn't go into that profession. Do you know how hard it is getting a 3-year-old to sit still? His brother, who's 6, wanted me to do his makeup like Darth Maul of Star Wars. And yeah, he he wouldn't sit still either. Hopefully I'll be able to post a picture on my blog if his mom gives me permission. There we go. Love that. Love that. Isn't that really pretty? So, whoops. So with this stuff here now, I only want to do one more thing. Clean the stencil. I'm going to try with Tighten Buff first. This may be a little too neutral though. This is Speck. And I'm going to get my number 4 round brush, some water. Yeah, I think I may have to go to white. Oh, there we go. You want to make it just fluid enough. The inks would have been good for that too. The medium misters. Oh, I took my apron off and guess what happened? Yeah, I'm gonna hear from Joe on that. And you know what? Let me do a little bit of white. No, not quite yet, so I'll have to do it this way. There we go. The larger the brush, the bigger the splats, because it holds more paint. And this, because there's water in it, it's just going to be diffused. And the reasoning I chose the stencil with that word and then the other stencil is there's, you know, the black magic remedies of olden times and the things that people used for treatments, and I thought I would, because we got Halloween coming up next month. That just sounds funny. Halloween next month, and in a couple of days it's going to be 40 degrees Celsius outside. I thought I would do something this, and I'm thinking now even having a darker tone for this would have been really nice, like a more of a black page. But this turned out really, really pretty. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I think the video is a little bit longer than I was hoping, but I didn't want to skip any steps. So from this, the background is done, and I'm going to clean up this area, and I'll prepare for the next video. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I would love to see pictures of what your take on your version of this. Please feel free to post the pictures in our private Facebook group. The link to that is on my website at artplace.ca. You can find a link to that. And if you don't want to post publicly, I would love to see a picture. Just email me. Contact information is on my website as well. And let me know what you think. If you want to see more videos like this, give me a thumbs up and comment in the comments below what you thought, even some different ideas that could have been done with this, how you would have done things differently. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Anyway, so I'm off to clean up and get ready for my next video. So until then, stay inspired.